Rider Z-O is a 1993 movie created after the strong sales of the previous year's Shin Kamen Rider Prologue. Z-O is something of a return to basics for the series, at one point having been considered by Toei to be the Rider #1 for the Heisei era. To continue the 20th anniversary celebration of Rider, the film was originally intended to be released in theaters by itself, but at some point it was decided to release the film alongside movies for current Toei TV series, Die Ranger and Jamperson, in order to take less of a financial risk. As a result, what was originally intended to be a 90-minute movie had to be restructured and became a 47-minute movie. But did that hurt the film? Let's find out. Z-O opens with the classical beginning of the hero's journey, with said hero waking up butt naked in a cave somewhere. To jump ahead a bit, this is Masaru Asano, who is awoken by an insect that tells him of someone named Hiroshi Mochizuki, whom he must protect from beings called neo-organisms. He gets up and transforms. Following this, we get a scene of what I feel to be one of the strengths of the film, CGI from the 1990s. Oh wait, meant the next thing. The design of the first of the neo-organisms. My goodness, this thing is beautiful. The shots of blades popping out of it, the moving mouth, the thing is freaky, and a prime example of the good visuals the movie has going for it. Masaru arrives at the Mochizuki Genetic Engineering Research Institute, presumably after walking somewhere to get clothes and this motorcycle. He walks right in but doesn't get far into his digging around for information before his sixth sense alerts him to Hiroshi being attacked. We get a brief chase scene of the monster pursuing Hiroshi, and while I'm confused as to why it's apparently floating just barely above the ground, it does remind me of that feeling Kamen Rider gives off sometimes, especially in scenes like this when the monster is on the attack and the hero hasn't arrived yet. There's a bit of a suspense or horror feeling that I think is nice to have to mix things up. Then Masaru arrives as Kamen Rider Z-O, making a grand entrance through a brick wall and oh wow, just chops his hand off. As revealed from the neo-organism's perspective, both it and Z-O are creations of someone whom we'll find out is Dr. Mochizuki. And that Z-O is supposedly weaker than the neo-organism, leading to an exciting uphill battle that Masaru wins by ramming him with his bike, which results in the organism being impaled. I am starting to get the impression that this movie is a bit violent. Anyways, Hiroshi tells his grandpa about the monsters, but he doesn't believe him. Not that there was a monster, mind you, but that there were two monsters and one was chasing him. The mention of a grasshopper does pique the grandfather's interest, however, and he goes through some of the files of his missing son's research. And hey, would you look at that? And not just that, apparently, it was someone's job to put in some English text that might fit in here, but the article shown is related to someone's writing on menopause, which I don't believe would be too relevant. I assume it's because it has the words life and change in it. But hey, I'm just mentioning it for the sake of trivia. It's some English in a film aimed at a Japanese-speaking audience. Although the film was later made available to English-speaking audiences, this interesting detail is absent there. More on that at the end. Masaru tries to speak to Hiroshi. Hiroshi is creeped out by him and runs off to the protection of some older acquaintances of his. The first couple of times I watched this movie, I, somebody who has admittedly never watched Metal Heroes, wondered how important these characters were to the film, and if the roles might have been expanded if the film had been made for its originally planned runtime. During my most recent viewing, when I was paying more attention than ever before, I had a realization that might give me an answer to that question. That dude with the mustache is Kenji Oba. In fact, all of these martial arts characters are played by actors who had a major role in Metal Heroes. So the answer to my question is probably not. My reasoning for it is because other Rider films, made within the next 10 years, would have cameos as well, would serve the point of being just cameos that don't extend beyond a single scene. Alternatively, these could have been cameos casted after the film script had been shortened, so I don't know anything. Matsuru explains some of the situation to them, but their conversation is interrupted by more neo-organisms showing up. I won't be repeating myself after this, but once again, these monsters look awesome. The spider is an interesting one to note. Typing in Kamen Rider and stop motion into a search engine only brings up fan-made projects. Are there any other uses of stop motion in this 50-year-old series? I kinda like it. But there is a bit of a problem with the flow of the fight, in my opinion. For example, stop motion monster takes a slow swing at our Kamen Rider, and when we see him block, it's at a faster pace. Overall though, I'm pretty happy with the creative choice made here. After Masaru saves Hiroshi from the monsters, the grandfather starts to explain what's up with his missing son, Professor Mochizuki. Like the original writer, Masaru was turned into a cyborg against his will. Apparently, Shocker, the terrorist organization, was a bit nicer though, as they seemed to have put Takeshi Hongo to sleep when operating on him. Masaru was awake for his operation. The revelation that Professor Mochizuki committed this crime and created the monsters that are targeting his own son are too much for the grandfather and Hiroshi, who runs off again. We see through flashbacks that his dad used to be a caring man, but by the time of his new organisms being created, things have changed. Hiroshi wants to throw away the broken watch that his dad gave him, but Masaru stops him. And then he fixes it. I guess that's one of the cyborg powers he has. After about a minute of a vocal version of the song from the watch playing, they talk about how, while the professor seems to be bad now, the goodness he showed previously is likely genuine, which calms Hiroshi down. Unfortunately, Hiroshi is all too happy to see his father, who isn't walking towards the sun but luring him away. Masaru runs after Hiroshi, but runs into the first monster again, now with a rocket punch. When he regains consciousness, the insect from the beginning returns to tell him where Hiroshi was taken. Why are you looking at us? If you wanted to make sure we understood that you understood, I swear I was paying attention this time. He makes his way to the location where he finds Hiroshi. Ryder? Since when did you know that's what he was called? Oh, that makes sense now. The bat new organism pins him against a wall, forcing Masaru to pull a pretty clever trick out of his sleeve. The trick of punching a hole through the bat. I do doubt he was expecting that. The real professor finally turns up, a prisoner of his own creations. He reveals that he was the one using the insect to telepathically communicate with Masaru to save his son after the organisms began acting on their own. The supposedly perfect lifeborn rises from its pool. Masaru fights it out with them, but is still unable to overpower them, leading to him being knocked out of his transformation. The only way to stop it is to take out the source of its power, the pool. Hiroshi's attempt ends up distracting the organism, allowing Masaru to escape and transform again. The fight resumes and will end differently this time. Oh. I mean, I'm not wrong, but... The musical watch from earlier falls out of Hiroshi's pocket, leading to the music causing the organism to stop and for Masaru to break free. While the organism is defeated, the professor dies and we see a cool dramatic escape from the collapsing facility. Masaru leaves Hiroshi with his grandfather, but now without saying goodbye in a way that's fitting for a man who doesn't speak very much. Kamen Rider Zero is a movie that does what it sets out to do in its less than an hour running time. Originally, the movie was intended to have a longer running time, but was made shorter to allow for it to be played alongside two other films out of a concern of taking a financial risk. The cutting down of the plans for the film to take less of a financial risk is something I consider understandable. Kamen Rider had been off the air with the end of Black RX for over 3.5 years before this movie's release, and Shin Kamen Rider Prologue was straight to video. Zero establishes a new setting completely separate from any of the previous writers that audiences would know. In place of having a longer runtime, we have a simple story told that establishes character, fits in good action sequences without letting them feel like they're being used in place of the story, and doesn't really bite off more than it can chew. In terms of what might have been cut or could have been added if the movie were longer, I do wonder if there were any ideas to let Masaru work through the pain of what happened to him. He had his trust betrayed, went through an extremely painful experience on the operating table, had his body drastically altered forever, and if the professor was missing for 2 years, then he was up in the mountains asleep for at least 2 years, if not more. If he has any friends or family, they might have assumed he died after he went missing, several years ago. At the end of the movie, when Masaru tells Hiroshi that he can't stay, I assume it's because he has to get his life in order. The lack of this doesn't really hurt the movie, but I tend to wonder about the what-ifs. Maybe it was in the plans for the aborted TV series. One thing that might hurt this overall good movie, however, is its official English release.
It'll take more than that to defeat me, Destructosphere.
No, not that one. Yes, this one. Uploaded by Toei Tokusatsu World Official. If I may ask, why in the world does it look like this? This is a movie with a Blu-ray release. Why does an official release on a channel that, as far as I can tell, is owned by Toei and not just another company licensing their works, looks like it came from a VHS rip. It's 480p, and even then I've seen better at that quality for Kamen Rider. On the brighter side of things, however, in December of 2021, the company Media Blasters made a tweet implying that they would be releasing this film, Shin Kamen Rider Prologue, and Kamen Rider J. And fingers crossed it won't turn out like my assumption about Turbo Ranger on DVD. I've yet to forgive you, Hasbro. Unless it's Toei. or Shout Factory? I'm upset with one of you.